way before you.
Hillary, you're going to do a roll call.
Yes, sir. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, folks. Take our seats. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. As you can see, Suzanne couldn't be here, so I get to fill in for us today. Happy to do so. We'll try to move quickly. So we'll start with convening the meeting, and we'll go through a roll call, please.
All right. Tim Andrus.
Here.
Michael Vogaris for Kurt Campbell.
Here.
Pat Calhoun.
Here.
Ray Chavez. Alan Cockrell.
Here.
Will Conley. Charlie Flatten.
Here.
Vic Hildebrand.
Here.
Kevin Yannick.
Here.
Tom Youngman.
Here.
Russell Labus.
Here.
Glenn Lord.
Here.
Dan Meyer.
Here.
Gary Middleton. Con Mims.
Here.
Jonathan Stinson for Kevin Pattison.
Yeah, here.
Ileana Pena.
Here.
Robert Puente.
Donovan Murphy here for John. I mean, for
Humberto Ramos.
Here.
Steve Ramsey.
Here.
Weldon Riggs.
Here.
Roland Ruiz.
Here.
Diane Savage.
Here.
Suzanne Scott. Greg Singelman.
Here.
Andrew Young for Mitchell Sowers.
Here.
Thomas Taggart.
Here.
Heather Sumter.
Here.
Ian Taylor.
Here.
Diane Wasnich.
Here.
Adam Yablonsky.
Here.
Elizabeth McCoy. Here. Ronald Beisler. Ileana Delgado. Don McGee. Marty Kelly.
Here.
Joseph McDaniel. Jamie McCool.
Here.
Carl Krull. Rusty Ray.
Here.
That is, we have a quorum.
Before we move to the first agenda item, let's set a few expectations here. I think it's going to be a fairly long meeting. We have some, we do have a number of strategies and so on to take a fair amount of time. The expectation is we'll continue past the lunch hour and we'll plan to work through the lunch hour. So if you're expecting a break around noon, take it yourself and we're going to continue. Take a small recess. Okay. We'll move to agenda item 1. Receive public comment. I don't have any cards. Is there anyone that wanted to make any comments before we proceed? There's an opportunity at the meeting. Okay. There being none, we'll move to agenda item 2. Remarks from Texas Water Development Board Director Jackson. Jackson.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks so much for having me. And we've got the team here this morning. Of course, our executive administrators are Walker, Sarah Bonkhouse, Elizabeth, and Aaron, which is with us today. So, great effort by, I think, the Water Development Board in supporting regional water planning. But, of course, the heavy lifting really is attributable to y'all and the great work that you do and the leadership that you show. And please know that, the efforts and the work of Regional is really seen across Texas. Not only in the work that you do specifically for your area, which is absolutely outstanding, but also I think in the work efforts that you do in kind of sharing those type of innovative technologies and work processes with other regional water planning groups. I mean, it's kind of like the eyes of Texas are upon Region L, and you're doing a great job. Of course, the work kind of moving forward from the Water Development Board, and I tell folks that, you take the Texas Water Development Board, which is a noun, and you turn it into a verb, it's about developing water for Texas. And as an engineer on the board, when I first came on board, and I continue to kind of ask that question, how do we measure our success? And, you know, as I travel around Texas and I've talked with many of y'all, you said, well, you know, we've seen kind of a lot of the water supply projects that kind of, no pun intended, have been kind of treading water for years. And I think really the intent of the legislature when they put in place the SWIFT, which was actually to be able to take the state water plan, the regional water plans, and, you know, start moving these major projects forward. And we've certainly seen that. We've seen the integrated pipeline in Dallas. We've seen the city of Marfa put in a water well utilizing the SWIFT funds. We've seen the Dallas Irrigation District #1 linear irrigation canals for conservation. We've seen North Texas put in and start construction on the first major reservoir to be built in Texas in 30 years. And then today, we have the largest water infrastructure project in the nation ongoing in Houston with the Loose Bayou project. And certainly as you look to San Antonio, you, in my opinion, are one of the greatest examples of kind of operating, you know, your water supply challenges as a system. And so you've got groundwater, you've got surface water, you've got desal, you've got ASR, and you take and kind of combine and work all of those together. And of course, everything started with conservation. In my previous life, I worked for a small company, ExxonMobil, for 37 years. And I know as an engineer, if I went to the corporation and said, we want to put in a new unit, or we want to develop a new product, the first question they would always ask is, tell me how efficiently you're using the resources you have. And so certainly that was something that, you know, San Antonio and Region L has done. You've gone in and you've addressed conservation first, meeting not only and providing, you know, that most cost-effective water supply, but meeting conservation, because the expectation of the public, which is so important in moving water supply projects forward, is that, you know, we don't do those separately. I mean, conservation needs to be kind of part of our culture. It's something that we do without even kind of thinking about. It becomes part of human nature. But it's also something that's important for us to invest in. So kind of as we look across Texas with the big cities and the small communities, one of the things that I think we're seeing is that we're seeing more investment in water conservation. Certainly a lot of great activities that have been done by Region L. I'm very pleased with the progress that we're making. I appreciate the work and the effort that you've done again in sharing your resources. One of the things that I think we're talking about now in the Texas legislature, and certainly on the heels of Hurricane Harvey and the flooding that we've had kind of here in the central Texas area, is, you know, the expectation or the anticipation of moving forward and addressing flood in a different way on a statewide basis than we've ever had before. And I just wanted to share with you, which probably many of you know, the role that the San Antonio River Authority and Suzanne Scott played in terms of making information available to how they have kind of managed it for years. And again, I just think that's a great expectation of how river authorities and water supply corporations and special utility districts and small cities and big cities are kind of sharing their thoughts and ideas. So again, we don't look at things in silos, but we look at them, you know, across the entire state, recognizing that it's not one big answer, it's a lot of little answers. So thank you so much for your leadership. I appreciate being here. We're very excited to be here to kind of recognize Con and the wonderful work that he's done in the leadership. So thank you very much, and I'll be here all day, so if you have any thoughts and ideas, tell folks we're not a regulatory entity. We exist to serve, and to the extent that there's any thoughts and ideas that you have about how we can be more efficient, we're all about continuous improvement. So please, listen to I think it is your idea. So, thanks for letting me in.
I believe we're going to have to do other comments.
So I'm here to recognize Con because I've been wanting Con a long time, and he's been the utmost professional all the time. Even when he's mad and frustrated, he loses his cool. I know that because I've been the reason for his mad and frustration several times. Now, He's been a regional chair of this committee. In fact, he got back on track when the line was late, which is a great thing. He's been the Nueces River Authority for quite a while, but the rumor is not true. He was created in 1935. He's been a very strong supporter of the planning process and a true advocate of Texas rivers. I mean, what better job can you have than to advocate for the most beautiful rivers in Texas, the Sabinal, the Brio, the Nueces, just beautiful, beautiful rivers. I think we'll continue to support those rivers. And I don't like to call retirement. I know Con will be retiring. It's more of a transition to your next life. And I welcome that for everybody. And I'm glad you're moving on and transitioning to the next thing. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much.
So we have a presentation for you, but before we give the presentation, it's been an absolute privilege and honor to work with Con. And I know when you work with professionals and those at River Authority, sometimes it's somewhat of a struggle when you're a water supply provider, but you also recognize the need to be able to protect the environment. You want to move things forward quickly, but you understand the value and the need of putting together a process so that for generations to come you have something in place that provides kind of that grounding foundation. And certainly, Con was a leader and instrumental in that in putting together the guiding principles, being kind of a beginning founding member of Region L, participating in that initial work group, which later became the Regional Water Planning Group, and then kind of stepping to the plate years ago and kind of asking the question, what do we need for the future so that this group can continue to be successful in kind of putting together those guiding principles, which now are available to regional water planning groups across the state. So a great leap behind. And then, of course, if we look across and see, some of the projects that he's championed, wastewater treatment for first-time people who didn't have wastewater treatment facilities, and being a real champion for a project that I had the privilege to go and be at the groundbreaking or at the ribbon cutting ceremony. And I believe that, that was almost something that took 20 years to accomplish. So, not only kind of there guiding folks in the short term, but recognizing that, things that were important need to be invested. Sometimes a solution takes a long time. Somebody who you just, if you've got a meeting with Con, it's like, oh gosh, this is great, because we're going to have a chance to sit down and visit. I'm going to be able to learn from him. I'm going to hear things, and it's always a very enjoyable experience because he's so professional and just, quite frankly, just such a great and wonderful person. So, on behalf of the Texas Water Development Board and our other two directors, of course, our chairman Peter Lake and Brooke Pop, and the entire board of the Texas Water Development Board, we wanted to present you with this certificate. So if you could come. It just says it's
a big certificate.
So it says, the Texas Water Development Board extends our gratitude to Con Mims for his years of dedicated service to Region L Regional Water Planning Group and his commitment to Texas water.
I'll take a picture right over here.
Oh, you're going to get one too?
1, 2. 1, 2. Thank you.
Just 1 second. We need one for Facebook. Thanks.
Well, Tommy keeps coming.
Oh, my gosh.
If you're anything like me, the embarrassment might kill you, but we're going to do it anyway. We'll move to the next agenda item. This is the recognition of the retirement of Tom Mims, Executive Director of the Nueces River Authority, for his 21 years of service to Region L. at least in my estimation, this is a milestone moment for the group. Just make a quick comment. You have a list in your packet of some of the accomplishments that are noteworthy, but give a little perspective to it to some of the people that are new to the group. I started coming to Region L in 2007, and I had no idea what I was getting involved with, and it was a difficult time. And you know, it's my privilege to see you lead this group through that time and get that plan approved and so on. And over the years, we've all seen it. You've been a wonderful leader and provided excellent guidance to the group, and we've benefited from it, and we've seen the change and the improvement over that time. So thank you, Con. I'll touch on two of the bullet points here that I think are particularly meaningful. The approval of the 2006 Regional Water Plan, which was late, which was a major issue. Achieving the approval of that was a substantial accomplishment. And then the designation of 5 streams or segments of the streams being ecologically unique in the region is a major accomplishment. You ought to be congratulated for that and the work you've done for Region L.
I think we need a round of applause.
Just remember, one offshoot wipes out 100 attaboys. And shoot's not the word I was thinking of. So.
I believe we also have a token of our gratitude for your service here at Region L. Steve has it there at the podium. I think Steve,
You want to come
yeah.
and just for the group's information, what we have is a picture that dates back to October 1998, of the original Regional Water Planning Group.
Wasn't that the year of the big flood?
Yeah.
It was. It was.
While they're taking pictures, one of the items that's first on your bulleted list is that in order for the initial coordinating body that was appointed by the Texas Water Development Board to become a regional water planning group, they had to appoint one new member in common as that member. So he was responsible by that act for the formation of the regional planning group.
Thank you, Con.
We also wanted to let the planning group see a special recognition that Con received at the legislature and the House and Natural Resources Committee.
But Con Mims is retiring from the Oasis River Authority. Con, you want to come up? We've got a resolution here. Con worked for the San Antonio River Authority for about 8 years, 43 years with the Oasis River Authority. He was recognized in his protection of natural resources. He received the Conservation and Environmental Stewardship Award from the Coastal Bend Bays Foundation. He's got a lot of accolades, but all of your work that you've done all over Texas, but primarily in Central Texas and the Hill Country, we fully appreciate it. We pull a flag on your behalf over the state capitol, and appreciate all the work you've done. I know Tracy's probably got some kind of words to say about it. Absolutely. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, Con, for all your work. Con has lived in New Valley for, been there the whole time you were with the Oasis River Authority? Yeah, 43 years, and he's very, very active in the community, not only in water things, but in other endeavors there in the community. He's one of those go-to people when somebody have a task that needs to be done, and we do appreciate your service all these years. And with Con, we recognized him in the house the other day.
Yeah, we did.
And we did. So anyway, thank you so much, Con. Look forward to seeing you back.
Okay, well, Con, there's been some very nice things said about you today, but enough of that. We have one more presentation to make to you. And, you know, I got the opportunity to work with Con back in the Trans-Texas Water Program. So that dates back to about 93. And then, of course, in the spring of '98 was when the Regional Water Planning Group process got started. But I never really knew where I stood with Con until October of '98, when Con sent me this memo for the staff work group meeting. And essentially, it says, due to a conflict in my schedule, which is to say your meeting is less important, I will be unable to attend the staff work group meeting today. So I appreciate knowing where I stood. And in recognition of that, the current members of the staff work group autographed a little.
Who found that one?
Yeah, that's good.
That was one of those career-defining pieces of paper that I filed.
Is this over with? You're right, I am going to die by embarrassment. I just want to tell everybody that Regional has been a huge part of my life for, 21 years? Is that what you said? And, the people make Regional. This is the grassroots approach to regional water planning, which is the way to do it. And everybody around this table through those 21 years have been wonderful people. I've grown to be friendly with everybody. And I want to thank, the planning group for any success I may be receiving accolades on today. It was because we worked together as a group. That's the only way we can do it. That plan that failed to be filed on time was a result of not working together. And so from then on, we have worked as a team, and we have learned to give and take, and that's how we get things done. And I really have enjoyed and appreciated my service with Regional, and I will not forget, this group of people. Thank you all very much for the embarrassment. Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item 4, discussion of appropriate action regarding River Authority and county representatives for the regional planning group. Within your packet, you have a letter regarding the resignation of Con from the planning group. That letter also includes a recommendation for Mr. John Byram, the new executive director of Oasis River Authority, to serve on Regional. There's, in addition, a letter regarding Mr. Conley's service to Regional and his continued service, that is, to Regional, although he's no longer an elected official. And then I talked to Mr. Calhoun. He intends to continue serving county representatives, and it's our understanding that Commissioner Court in Goliad County has taken action affirming that request. So unless we learn otherwise, we consider that position filled, non-vacant. So that leaves us with a matter of one vacancy for the River Authority position. Let's open it for, if there is any discussion, let's have that discussion. If there are any thoughts and comments, let's hear those. It's my understanding, and I'll get this confirmed, that in the past we've had a similar situation and we've foregone the sort of usual public notice process and application process. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, particularly for instances like this where there is only one potential candidate for this position, because there are 4 river authorities in Region L. 3 are currently seated. With Con's resignation, that would leave the vacancy with only the Oasis River Authority as the eligible candidate.
Is there any comments, discussions, recommendations?
Move to approve John Byram for authority, River Authority position.
Second.
Okay. Like that. We have a motion and a second to seat Mr. Byram as the next representative for River Authorities. If there's no discussion, we'll move to, do we need to do a record vote?
You can do it either way, vote
Not
or
required,
consensus.
correct? It not being required. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Byron, you present? Yes. We have a seat. I assume you'll take Con's previous seat, and if you like, take the opportunity to introduce yourself to the group. You'll be working with us for 21 years.
Are you ready for that?
No, I don't know. You know, I am looking forward to this. I know I've got great big shoes to fill, and I tried to fill those yesterday when I decorated the office. I put my University of Texas scoreboard up. First I asked, I said, Con's not going to be here anymore today, is he? And he said, no. So I put the scoreboard up. It looked so good up there. And dadgummit, if they didn't have to call Con to come in and approve a few checks. So Con comes in and sees that scoreboard, and he just shakes his head, you know. But I am excited. I have been in this area before. I've served, had the opportunity to work for Mr. Thuss here at the water system. So I know some about the water situation here. Also been fortunate enough to serve out in West Texas, city of San Angelo, city of Victoria, Texas, and most recently in Corpus Christi as Assistant Director of Utilities for wastewater. So my learning curve will be steep, but maybe it won't take me as long to get up to speed. But looking forward to working with you, and let's get after it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. We're making good progress here. We'll move to agenda item 5, approval of minutes from the January 31 meeting of the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group. Those minutes were sent out previously. I hope you've had a chance to review them. Are there any comments or discussion regarding the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I so moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as drafted. All those in favor, aye. Opposed? Being none, motion passes. Move to agenda item 6, status report. For status of the Interdocker Habitat Conservation Plan. Thank you. Okay, very good. Mr. Foreman's going to make a brief presentation regarding the plan.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all with an update on the HCP. It's our last meeting. We've had two significant things that are happening. One, I'd like to just kind of highlight. Last week on April 25th, we had the grand opening of our Refugia, which is in San Marcos, at the San Marcos Aquatic Resources Center, the National Fish Hatchery there. This was a big event for us because this is, if you're not familiar with the Refugia, this is our backup plan in case of catastrophic issues, either a drought of record, or massive damage to spring flow, which threatens habitat for the various species that are endangered or threatened that we work with. Just specifically like the San Marcos salamander, the Texas line salamander, the fountain darter, mouse spring griffle beetle. We needed to have a backup plan, so we worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife for the past 4 to 5 years. We signed a contract in 2017 with them, and we've now been able to execute that contract. And since the facility's built in San Marcos, the backup facility is in Uvalde at the National Fish Hatchery. Both facilities are up and running. They have ample populations of the various species that we're covering. They're also doing applied research at these facilities on behalf of the program. So in that vein, this is a major successful milestone in our program's existence. The EAA is to be given, as my home agency, deserves a lot of credit because the board has stepped up in major ways. This is an $18.8 million project investment as part of the HCP commitment from the EAA and from the permittees that are part of that, which is the San Antonio Water System, City of New Braunfels, the City of San Marcos, Texas State University, and the EAA. So I wanted to mention this and just highlight this because this is one of those events that we want to celebrate. It's a program that I'll be coming back to you over the coming years and reporting on. But I just wanted to give you an update on how that went. And secondly, I'd like to mention that we're currently under what we call a strategic adaptive management program process. And that, in our terms, means that we're going to make some changes to our ACP, which there's documents that we live by that are our Bibles, effectively. Bibles basically lay out how we do operations, what we agreed to coming out of the ERIP process. And in those documents, it's been laid out. We have the VISPO program, the Voluntary Irrigation Suspension Program option. And the VISPO program is basically set up as a forbearance program that we work with irrigators in the western part of the Edwards Aquifer region. Also, those in the number of irrigators that we can work with in Bear County and Indiana County as well. But this program is not set up to forbear 40,000 feet. And this program is currently, the reason why we're going through an adaptive management process is one final option that we had to work through was how do we create adequate spring flow protection for the Comal Springs? And Comal Springs is what we needed to do. We're still falling short in our modeling what we needed to get 30 CFS. And that's a minimum flow in the drought of record. And so that minimum flow is part of our acceptance by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for our HCP, our Habitat Conservation Plan. We guaranteed that we would meet that through our modeling and then how we can manage to effectively make that happen. So in our modeling, we've run new scenarios where we've shown stronger forbearance program using the DISPO program. And from 40,000 acre feet, we're now proposing to increase that to 41,795 acre feet. It's in the big scheme of things, of the hundreds of thousands of acre feet that are foreborn through ASR, through SAWS programs, as well as our own programs. This is a small drip in the bucket, but it's a very important drip in the bucket because it helps us achieve 30 CFS in the Comal Springs system. And that's very important for the overall program and our trajectory. So we're in the process of working with our implementing committee and with the stakeholder committee. And then eventually, once those committees are this and approve this, I'll come back and give you an update on how that's gone and where we stand on it. But I did want to give you at least a snapshot of what's happening there, because this is a very integral piece of what we'll be doing in the coming year as we move forward on this program proposal. Anyway, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Story.
You're welcome.
Move to agenda item 7, status of the Guadalupe San Antonio Mission and Aransas River Mission, Hospital Bay, PGAS, expert science.
I'm the vice chair, and so there's a page in your agenda packet that lists the studies that were recently reported at our meeting. We haven't had a meeting in a long time. I think it was a year while we waited for those studies to be completed or get close to completion. And so we heard from all of those studies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And you can see the presentations if you're interested in a particular one at the link that's been given. It's way too long for me to read out loud. And we wanted to let you know that the other piece of business we're taking care of is finding some people to fill 5 vacancies on the stakeholder group. And those include chemical manufacturing, commercial fishermen, municipalities, recreational water users, and industry refining. So there's not an address for Jade here, but you can find that on TCEQ, any TCEQ address. Jade Rutledge is the person, or you can contact me or Stephen.
It's on the next page as well. On the nomination form, all of her information is there.
On the next page of, I see, the nomination form
Yes.
is actually included in our packet, and it has the address. Thank you so much. And so you can recommend people to serve on that committee, and there are 3 other vacancies that will be filled by contacting directly the entities who usually appoint appoint the Soil and Water Conservation District, river authorities, and regional water planning group stakeholder categories. So just wanted y'all to know what was going on about that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comments, questions? Okay, we move forward to agenda item 8, discussion appropriate action to nominate a DBAS regional representative. Tom's resignation continues to ripple through. Tom was the representative from this group to DBAS, so we need to at least consider replacing that representative. So that's the agenda item we have before us. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone that wants to serve on that? Okay, so we'll do this. It's been brought to you. We'll, I guess, postpone any sort of action until the next meeting. Does that work for the BBAS schedule?
I think so.
So we'll postpone that. Encourage everyone to consider serving in that role, and if you care to, let Steve and Sarah know that. And we'll put the matter back on the agenda for the next meeting and try to take action at that time.
And Tim, I didn't mention that the members on the committee are listed. Thank you for the info in the packet here. There's several pages of that, and there's rules about how we conduct our work and our meetings at the BBAS. If anybody wants to see that or talk to any of us that are on this list who are members of this committee to get an idea of what it means to be on that committee, please let us know.
And the nomination form would be the form they would use to fill any of the other vacancies.
Yes, to send to Jay, our TCEQ contact.
Okay, let's continue moving forward here to agenda item 9. Communications from the Texas Water Development Board.
Morning. Since the January meeting, the Water Development Board has approved regional's requested amendments to board-adopted population and demand projections. We've also received and are processing the notice to proceed for Block 2 water management strategies and the request for the board to perform a socioeconomic impact analysis of not meeting identified water needs. And a quick reminder on that, that analysis is going to be based on the needs that are identified in the planning database as of May 31st. So that date is fast approaching. So in February, the board approved the revised uniform standards. These revisions came out of the stakeholder committee meeting at the end of last year, and they'll be used to prioritize the recommended projects in the 2021 regional water plan. A few weeks ago, the Drought Preparedness Council met and approved submitting some recommendations to the planning groups. It sounds like they're finalizing these recommendations and will be submitting them to the group as a letter in the near future. We've also posted a template for Chapter 7 of the regional plan, which is the chapter that is on drought response and recommendations. And so that can be found on the Water Development Board's website under the 5th cycle working document, Task 7. And then lastly, we have created some new educational materials at the request of several planning groups, and I passed out a few copies today. The first one goes over the SWIFT prioritization process, and it talks about how projects are prioritized at the regional and state level. And the second document covers planning group responsibilities, and the intent of this document was to provide the public some a better understanding of what the role of planning groups are. So it talks about what the responsibilities are, but it also kind of gives some examples of what planning groups or what actions are outside of the planning group purview. So these and other educational materials bills are posted on our website. You can find these under regional water planning and educational information. That's all I have for you today. Are there any questions?
So you mentioned early on that you'd received 2 of our requests, correct? One doing with the, I guess, analysis and the block 2 group of strategies. You've received it?
We've received those. We're working on processing them. The block 2 water management strategies, we've been in discussions with Sarah about combining that contract amendment with potentially the block 3 that you're going to use. And the socioeconomic impact analysis, we're kind of working on developing those. It'll start after May 31st, and they'll be prepared by the end of the year.
And as a planning group, we're not waiting on any response from that. It's not an obstacle to us proceeding in any way, right?
Once you approve the water management strategies, I can start working on it. We can't pay until they've done their process for them, but it's, we're good.
Thank you. Let's move to agenda item 10. Chair report. But we do have some information we want to pass on to the group. We're going to make, provide some comments.
Quick legislative update. Everything is moving really quickly right now, so some of the things you're seeing on the sheet have changed since. I'm just going to highlight the top 2 that are mostly related to us, but if you have other questions, feel free to ask. So the first one we talked about at our last meeting, HB 723 was Larson's water availability models bill. Since we last spoke, the San Antonio and Guadalupe basins have been removed from the bill, so they are not slated to go through the next round of studies. It passed in the Senate yesterday with a committee sub that includes a fiscal responsibility through the TCEQ. Put that in there, or they put that in there for that. And so that's where we're at on that one. The next is the Interregional Planning Council. It has moved from the House to the Senate. It was referred to Water Rural Affairs, but has not been given a hearing yet in the Carries Committee. So we're still kind of keeping an eye on that. And the rest of the bills, they've moved around a little bit since we've gotten this. For sure, the Perry and Creighton bills have moved, SB 758. They were heard in House Natural Resources this week and were left pending. So there was good committee stuff that went on that. But if you have any other questions or about this, do you guys have anything you want to add?
I'm in session right now.
We're at like 26 or something. So.
Thank you. That's all I have to report. Move to agenda item 11. Discussion appropriate action regarding consultant work and schedule. Right?
This agenda item.
You can get rid of it.
You don't need to say it again, please.
Keep it. There you go. Keep it.
I have a schedule for
You know it's old when
Monday,
the most
for y'all
important
today.
thing right under your name is the fax number.
We are in the last 2 years of our planning group. We are, as I talked about in previous meetings, currently in the middle of evaluating water management strategies. We're doing a lot of writing for the plan itself. We are going to take off on some drought response information very soon. We'll be looking at the impacts of the plan in its entirety once we evaluate all the water management strategies and start putting them together. So later this year, we're still on target for the March 3rd due date for the initially prepared plan or the draft plan. And in which case we'll have our public hearings after that, likely in April. And then we'll finish up the plan by October of 2020. So a so we're cruising along. There's a lot of water management strategies still to be evaluated and to be presented. Essentially, we have 3 meetings to do that, including this one, and today's on kind of only about 6 to present. I think at the end of, where we are now, we're going to be somewhere around 34 to 36 water management strategies to present. So you can imagine the next 2 meetings are going to be very heavy on water management strategies. So just stick with hearing me talk and have others step in and talk for me. So rely on some of ourselves and other Black Beach employees that come help. So any questions about schedule or where we can stand? Okay, just give you a fair warning. August and November, we'll go for lunch.
Well, no, I thought perhaps you were going to mention, are we going to be looking at or considering additional meetings?
So, yeah, one of the things we talked about, so at the end of the calendar year, November meeting, typically we look forward to the next year's cycle. This planning group traditionally meets February, May, August, and November. With that March 3rd deadline for the IPP, it might be a good idea, and I'm just putting that out here now, we don't decide until November, that we consider meeting twice in the early part of 2020 prior to that March 3rd deadline. Simply that gives us time to split up kind of the formulation of the plan and the evaluation of the cumulative effects of the plan, and then also the adoption of the draft plan. So, and likely what's going to happen too is after that March deadline, the Water Development Board has a certain amount of days to respond to comments. Other state agencies have time to respond. There's an open window for public. There's not a lot of action for us to do as a planning group. That May meeting may not be necessary for us to have anyway. So I'm not proposing we have 5 meetings in 2020. I just want to put it out there as a consideration that maybe we have our first 2 meetings early on, and then have our normal August. Just something to consider, something to think about. Again, this is May. We typically don't set the schedule until November, so talk amongst yourselves, see how things go. So, the other thing I had on this agenda item is we have an updated list of the Black Beach team and the various projects they're working on in the region. There's a separate handout. There's a piece of paper you have today. Just want to keep you informed on what we're doing in the region. There's Black Beach, SWCA, Associates, and Associates. If you have any questions about those, I think we have represented them all for us here today. So you can always reach out to us and ask, hey, what's this project? So, want to keep you guys informed.
Okay, thank you. Move to agenda item 12, discussion appropriate action regarding Chapter 8 policy recommendations. Planning group. Ryan, if you would, why don't you give us a brief description of what Chapter 8 is, and maybe even discuss what we've done in the past in order to develop that chapter?
Sure. So, in your packet, I believe you have this presentation here, which is Chapter, 3 quick slides on just what Chapter 8 policy recommendations and unique sites are. And you also, I think you have a copy of the 2016 Chapter 8 in there as well. That has not been updated. That is strictly what is in the 2016 plan. Copy of it. I brought this up at the last planning group meeting, and something we want to probably start thinking about. So Chapter 8, if you want to boil it down to a sentence or two, is really an opportunity for the planning group to speak its mind about policy and unique sites, whether that's stream segments or reservoir sites, or other issues that they think is important to kind of get out to the legislature, to state agencies, to whomever, about how not only regional planning is done, but other things that affect water planning in the state of Texas. And so the first 2 slides here just kind of document what the board rules are and what the Texas administrator talks about in terms of what Chapter 8 is supposed to do. So the first one there is that the regional water plan shall contain any regulatory, administrative, or legislative recommendations developed by the planning group. B allows for regional water planning groups to recommend all or parts of rivers or stream segments. And that's something we kind of discussed already today with Con and the 5 segments that this planning group did in previous cycles. The planning group also has the opportunity to recommend sites of unique value for construction of reservoirs. It's not something that this planning group's done, but I think other planning groups have done in the past as well. There's kind of this catch-all Part D here that talks about any other recommendation that the planning group believes are needed or desirable to achieve the stated goals of the state and regional water plan. So that's, again, kind of a catch-all. They can develop information as to potential impacts of proposed changes to law. So we are in a legislative session. We have new potential legislation coming forward. If there's something in there of concern that you think you need to speak on, that this is your opportunity to do so as well. And you can consider making legislative recommendations to facilitate voluntary transfers of water. So this chapter's been in each of the planning cycles. Typically, we start with the previous cycle as kind of a base because there's a lot of knowledge incorporated in there. And in past planning cycles, there's been a work group developed to kind of go through that with a fine-tooth comb and make necessary changes. And the third slide here kind of talks about some of the things that I saw in there that probably just need to be updated. So we went through this whole 2021 plan enhancement process, which ultimately became Regional's guiding principles. The 2016 Chapter 8 talks about, hey, that should be done. Now it's been done, and we've documented that. It's probably a good idea to kind of replace the old language and put in what was developed. Update information as it pertains to pending or enacted legislation since 2015. It's been 4 years now, or almost 4 years since then, so there's probably some legal ramifications of what in there and what our recommendations are. Revisit the 6 recommendations from the 2016 plan regarding groundwater management. I'm not sure that that needs to change significantly, but it just the way it's written and talked about, and the fact that a lot of the issues we were having back then have kind of been mitigated with the change in the MAGs and the DFCs in the region. We may want to think about looking at that language and just seeing if there's any change that can be done. Update information that pertains to GMA process and DFCs, again, that's just mentioned, and then revisit specific language that just applies strictly to the 2016 plan. Maybe no longer valid. Plus, there's also the opportunity to add new information here. So, like I said, anything new that's come up in the last 5 years that you might want to consider being in here. This is really a chapter. While Black and Beach will help facilitate the writing of it, is really your thoughts and your language that needs to be in there about, again, what you want to tell the Water on Board, what you want to tell CCQ, what you want to tell the Ledge, what you want to tell Parks and Wildlife, and other entities around the process. So, any questions, comments on that?
In the past, we've used a committee of the group to, is that correct? Committee of the group to propose draft revisions for the larger planning group.
Yeah, so that group would meet once or twice, probably kind of go through this, mark up Chapter 8, and insert text, delete text, whatever, and then come back with a red line version of that for the planning group to discuss. So I think it would behoove us to think about that process again and either come back in August or November with those kind of markups so that we can include it in the IPP launch.
So ideally, the meetings would occur before July.
I mean, if you want to target the August meeting to have that discussion with the larger group, that would be ideal. I mean, if you want to push that discussion to November, we could then look at dates for summer travel, so that won't be relevant. It's up to you how you want to handle it. If the whole group wants to try to tackle it too, that's an option, although that won't be able to come with something.
Ryan, is that committee populated?
It's up to the chair and the members of the planning group how they want to set that committee up.
In the past, it's been volunteer.
Yes.
Or volunteer.
Quick question.
One cycle, the executive committee is just told to do it. So.
I'm sorry. When would this group need to consider those drafts and have it resolved in order?
I think ideally we'd like to have Chapter 8 kind of buttoned down by November. End of the year. Or we'll say end of the year. So yeah.
Okay, so yes, I think we need to appoint a committee of the group to work on reviewing and possibly drafting changes to that chapter 8, or anything in between drafting changes to completely rewrite it. But are there any general discussion, and if so, or not, are there any planning members that are interested in serving on that committee?
I would serve.
Okay. So we have at least 2 members. I plan to serve as well. Okay, well now, I'll go through. Okay. Okay, so I think in our packet here we have a snippet from the bylaws. At any rate, sort of outlining how these committees operate and so on. It is an inclusive committee. Our committees are, so even if you haven't raised your hand, so to speak, today, if you decide to participate, the committee welcomes you.
Tim, if I could just add one thing. Suzanne did volunteer to chair.
Oh.
So if anybody's worried about being the chair of the group, and that's why you're not volunteering, Suzanne will chair the group.
I'm in.
And then before you get off of this, I just want to make sure we got the names of everybody that has raised their hand.
Very good. So I thought what we would do is have those individuals that want to participate call out their names so it's recorded for you and for the purpose of developing the minutes. So I'll entertain a motion to form a Chapter 8 Committee of the Regional Planning Group chaired by Suzanne Scott with members that identify themselves here in a moment with the goal of presenting a draft recommendation for Chapter 8 no later than the November 2019 meeting of the group.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second before we vote on this. Those that are interested in participating, in addition to Suzanne Scott, please call out your name. Tim Andrus will participate. Others going around the room?
Beth Ramos. Tom Tiger.
Charlie Platten.
Eliana Pena.
Brian Lawson.
Steven Siebert.
Steven, you changed.
Anyone else? Okay. So we've got the list of names of those people that are committed to participating. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? There being no opposition, the motion passes. Very good.
Thanks. I realized the microphone was off, so turn it on. If that's too loud, let me know.
Okay, if there's no additional discussion on item 12, we'll move to item 13, presentation of water management strategy evaluation. Right?
Yes. So this page is not in your packet, but I just wanted these 2 pages. I just want to show these real quick. It's kind of the schedule we proposed earlier and still are sticking to in terms of evaluating water management strategies and developing the scopes and fees and whatnot. I think most of you know, but I'll just reiterate that we had block 1 and block 2. It's just a grouping. That's all those mean. Of water management strategies that have been approved both by this planning group and it has been accepted and approved by notice to proceed by the Water Island Board, at least in block 2. Block 3 we'll talk about later, but that's that. I wanted to kind of list out all of them too. This is all the ones. This is really loud. So this is all the ones that have been approved at this point so far. I think there's 29, if I remember. And the ones in blue will be the ones we will be talking about today. Just so you know. And I'll try to keep this list kind of updated, which ones we've already discussed, which ones we're discussing today, which ones we're going to discuss in the future. So everything in gray will be discussed in the future. Blue will be discussed today. I'll pick another color for already discussed next week. So.
For the benefit of the new members,
yeah.
By approved, you mean approved for evaluation?
Approved for evaluation, that's correct. Sorry. Thank you. So let's get into it here. So the first one I was going to discuss, I think, and I'm trying to go in order of the packet, so if you want to keep along there in the packet, you can. So advanced water conservation for municipalities. The objective of this is to, just as especially for our new members, we think of water conservation and regional planning as those activities and entities doing year in and year out to conserve water. It doesn't matter if it's drought or flooding like crazy. It's activities that a community can do to save water year in and year out, as opposed to drought management. Drought management is activities that you would implement only in drought conditions for kind of a short-term fix. So advanced water conservation, reduce per capita water use without adversely affecting the quality of life. There's 21 best management practices we talk about in the write-up for this. I kind of grabbed a few here that a lot of entities typically do, but the use of low-flow plumbing fixtures, more efficient water use appliances, modifying or installing less water-intensive landscapes, repairing plumbing and water-using appliances to reduce leaks, and also looking at water audits, and then modification of personal behavior either through water conservation pricing or education. The whole list of the 21 is listed here. I want to mention too that this is a water conservation that's sometimes referred to as like active water conservation. It's what entities and utilities are doing above kind of passive water conservation, that being the water conservation that happens naturally because of the plumbing code. As a utility has new growth, you're obviously going to get the efficient plumbing fixtures installed and whatnot, as like rehabilitations happen and remodels happen, you're replacing older fixtures with new fixtures. That's the passive water conservation that's already occurring. This strategy tries to capture what you can do above and beyond that. So there's a whole list of 21 best management practices there. One thing that's kind of relatively new in this space, and I know SAWS has implemented some of this, and I think St. Marcus and New Braunfels have talked about this too, or we're working on it, is advanced meter infrastructure. This is kind of your smart meters. Being able to install an AMI network that looks at better calculation of what's being used at the end of the pipe, what's looking for leak detection sensors, etc. This allows utilities to kind of operate more efficiently, just in getting additional knowledge from the smart infrastructure. Last cycle, in fact, SAWS had specific sub-strategy of this in there. I think they got some SWIFT funding for that. No, they did not SWIFT funding. They spent their money to get it. So, but they have installed some now at this point. So.
Can I make a comment about that? We
Yes.
have about 70% of our water meters changed out, and just with the 70%, we have found about a third of our customers have been contacted by us because we found a leak on their side. So it's been remarkable, and that's just since last August. It's been a tremendous strategy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
What city
New Braunfels.
And just to update you on San Marcos's status, we've been installed fully on a system like that for the last 10 years, and we're currently installing our second generation system, so with similar results.
Yeah, it's one of those. There's a cost associated with it. Smart meters aren't obviously as cheap as typical meters, but there's a real water savings associated with it. And so there's a tangible effect of spending that money and seeing the results almost instantaneously. Since August, as Mr. Taylor mentioned. So.
Mr. Taylor, what was those numbers again?
Since August, where's Ryan? Since August, I believe, since we started identifying folks who had leaks, about a third of our customers have been contacted by us. And that's with only 70% of the meters changed out. The reason we're at 70% is because we're changing them as the meters hit their 7-year birthday, so it pays for itself to replace it. So in the next couple of years, I think we'll have 100% change out.
That third, you've had issues with that water leaks on their side?
That's right. We look for zero consumption over a 48-hour period. If we don't find it, we don't find it. Third, remarkable.
How quickly can you notify? Is it within a day, or do you have to wait a month?
Go ahead, Ryan.
It's several times a week. So like Ian said, if there's continuous consumption for 48 hours, there's no zero intervals. We capture hourly interval data. There's no zero intervals that apply to this league. And several times a week, we batch, send out text messages and phone calls to folks to notify them.
How big is the leak that would trigger such a
Our
notification?
resolution is down to the 100th of a gallon per minute.
It's pretty good. Another part of, any other questions on AMI? Okay, so my point with bringing up AMI specifically is that there is a strategy, right, that your utility is interested in having an AMI in there. We can put a subsection in this write-up to talk about your utility specifically in AMI and how you might go forward. So, because that's kind of one of those 21 best managed practices, but the more local, better information we have, we'd like to highlight that. And there's SWIFT funding available for conservation measures, and that's one that can potentially be out there for you. So another part of advanced water conservation that we wanted to highlight in here too is Ms. Wasnick had brought forward at the last planning group meeting the information from the Texas Living Waters. They had done a study on 4 different regions: Region C, Region H, Region K, and Region L, just looking at outdoor water use and how there could be potential savings if utilities within those regions went to no more than twice per week watering restrictions. And so there's some information here. Generally, I'm following numbers of days, water restrictions, particularly number of days or weeks a resident can water, the hours in which that resident can irrigate, and specific water delivery technologies. So, getting rid of those kind of the big air sprayer type irrigation and more like ground focused or leaky leaflet type systems almost. So, anyway, so water utilities could enforce mandatory outdoor watering schedules by adopting provisions like this through their ordinance rules. Implementation requires careful planning, stakeholder input, education, and of course enforcement as well. This is just some of the information they pulled together regarding that. They looked at it kind of at 2 different levels: a low effort and a high effort. Looking at reducing water consumption 3.5% of the total municipal demand, or up as high as 8.5% of total municipal water demand. And they generate these numbers for this and these tables. I kind of want to show for you. This information specific to Region L from that Texas Living Waters report will be included in this, either in this write-up or in his appendix. I'm quite excited after that. Yes.
I'd like to just say one additional thing, and that is that these folks analyze in great detail each city or water user group and how much they could save and how much that would go towards unmet need. And so all of that information is available for every single city or water user group.
That's actually correct. In our last packet, that presentation was included, and I think it was the entire presentation to all 4 regions, but the last one presented was L, and the last 12 to 15 slides were each of those water user groups listed out with the information they analyzed. So that, if you're interested in that information, I'm sure we can get you that presentation again, or you just go to the regionaltexas.org website and look at the packet from last meeting. So down to the analysis, advanced water conservation for the planning group. In the absence of better local information, this planning group traditionally has offered up the following method. For municipal water use groups with a starting water use of 140 gallons per capita per day or more, so above this 140 threshold, we will look at reducing per capita water use 1% per year until that level reaches that 140 gallons per capita per day threshold, at which then it would reduce that savings to 0.25% per year. It's a simple calculation. We just look at where the base GPCD is for every single water user group, municipal water user group, and we calculate out saving 1% per year if they're above 140 until they reach 140, and then reduce that savings to 0.25%. For municipal WUGs that are already below 140, we just start with that 0.25% reduction per year. So that information gets summed up at the water user group level by decade. So we'll look at 2020, 2030, 2070, and what this goal should say that advanced water conservation could save. We then compare to their actual water use in those years and see if there's the ability to go beyond the passive and active, just at the active, and see how much savings can be. So, and again, if a WOG offers up more, local specific information, we'd much rather put that in here. This is kind of our fallback base for calculating 139 municipal water user groups, how we're going to recommend water conservation for them. And so just some kind of summary statistics here. So if you look at the entities in the 2021 Regional Water Plan, municipal ones, those that have already 148 GPCD water use or less, there are 66 of those water user groups. That accounts for about 47.5% of our 140. The population within that 66 water user groups is almost 2.5 million people, and their 2020 water demand is 325,000. So overall, a vast majority of the people living in Regional are already below this 140 threshold. Those that live in those entities that are above 140 gallons per capita per day, there's 73 of those, making up about 52.5% of the water user groups, but about a little less than 500,000 number of people and about 105,000 acre-feet of demand in 2020. When you do the calculations I described on the previous page, and you look at these and these groups and project out across the entire region, we could save about 4,600 acre-feet per year in 2020. That grows to over 51,000 acre-feet per year by 2070, just by implementing this advanced water conservation strategy. That's if everyone tried to reach their stated goal on these decadal marks. Some of those, again, reductions could include plumbing fixtures, closed water retrofit, lawn irrigation conservation, and any one of those 21 best management practices. Cost of this is viewed not only as, cost included here is considered the cost of programming. So if a utility is buying retrofits for toilets and shower heads, if they're spending money on an educator to go out and work with the community and try to develop educational pamphlets, advertisements, talks to large groups, whatever. Some of the water pricing strategies, all this. Anyway, the reductions there are there again. The implementation costs anywhere from about $3 million in 2020 up to about $35 million in 2070. So, yes.
How many of the water user groups, roughly, like maybe percentage-wise or number-wise, have given you their own goals which are less than these?
Less?
Well, more reduction.
Oh, more reduction. SAWS, San Antonio Water System, that's my last speaker, has provided some local knowledge, local information specific to them, and this is their own stated conservation goals here.
And they're the only one?
So far.
Okay.
It's still open. That chapter's not written yet, so if there's anyone who has more local information would like to provide it again, and it could be specific to AMI, it could be specific to something else, or it could just be a general goal that the utilities have that they can provide that to us. So, any questions on advanced water conservation? Any other questions, I should say? Okay. Well, as we get more information, we'll get this, we'll incorporate it. This will write this chapter relatively soon, but realize it's kind of a work in progress. We probably won't finalize the complete written document until late this year, early next year. So it's not like you have to send me something tomorrow if you want to think about this. That's fine too. Okay. Next is expanded local CREZO for SAWS, San Antonio Water System. So, advanced water conservation is kind of its own category. It's a lot of different water user groups. Most of our water user strategies will be centered around one water user group or one or two water user groups. And it's very specific kind of facilities, infrastructure related one. for the new members here, this is what you're going to see on this one and many of these throughout the next couple months. Is very kind of formulaic in how we do it. We want to present information that kind of gives you a background of the project. We'd like to provide a map if we can. We like to provide a listing of the facilities, and then we provide some cost information, and a very high level cost information. So typically these will be about 4 to 5 slides each. We'll kind of try to talk through those. Again, we're going to be presenting somewhere probably 34 to 36 water management strategies over the next 6 months or so. So I don't want to inundate you with a ton of information. Realize that the write-up will be a little more comprehensive. We'll have better information. And the cost table will be a little more elaborate. The environmental information will be much more elaborate. But this is all kind of summary level information. The other thing I want to point out too is that as we come to present strategies to you, we are working to try to not only do the analysis and get this presentation for you, but also get that write-up pulled together and send those write-ups out to the sponsor of each project to give them a chance to review. So for this one and the next 3 after this sponsor has received those write-ups at this point already. They are in the process of making comments and getting information back to us. So while I feel pretty good about showing you some information, realize that some things can change because of these comments we might get back from the sponsors. Really want to give them an opportunity to have buy-in on, we're not misrepresenting their project, essentially. The other thing, too, is I've tried to go through here, and one of the guiding principles was we talked about how a water management strategy is founded. And so, one of those things was like identifying, who is the sponsor, identifying the source, and maybe who has the permitting jurisdiction over that source of water. So I've tried to go through here and incorporate all that information. I think there were about 6 or 7 bullet points out of that guiding principle. While it's only 4 slides, we've tried to incorporate all that information in here so that you guys understand that we're living by that guiding principle and we're presenting that information. So that's a general overview of water management strategies. Let's talk specifically about local Carrizo for SAWS. As I mentioned, SAWS has had a chance to, is in the process of reviewing this. They sent me a few comments back, and in fact, specific to this one, there's going to be some changes. But first of all, this was a recommended water management strategy in the 2016 plan, so this is an update of one that was in the 2016 plan. The source and supply. So the source is the Carrizo Aquifer groundwater in Bexar County. There currently exists no groundwater conservation district over that. According to the MAG, groundwater is available in the area. This project would produce a total firm yield of about 21,000 acre-feet per year. They're looking to develop it in 3 phases, all in the decade of 2040, just not in the same year. So it'd be kind of maybe one phase is in 2041, another one in 2044, another one in 2047 or something. I don't know. But they have these projects up and running in the decade of 2040, 7,000 acre-feet per phase. And then the end delivery point for this would be the SAWS H2O Center, where it will be then treated and moved on. So here's a map. This is another thing too. Anytime we present a map, I want to make sure we have this note here that, and I'll say it once. I'm not going to read it every single time, but essentially the location of facilities on this map are hypothetical locations of facilities for regional planning purposes only as it relates to planning level cost estimates. The locations shown on the map are conceptual in nature and are not meant to represent actual locations of facilities. Siting of facilities are subject to additional studies, designs, engineering, and/or contractual negotiations that will be determined at a later date by the project sponsor, essentially. So, and that's a lot of words. To catch all, I just want to show that we're showing general locations. In order for us to do the costing, we need to at least nail something down and make some assumptions. That's what the purpose of the map and where facilities are, so that we have a somewhat realistic cost that we can put together. I say somewhat very loosely. Yes, Ms. Wilson.
Related to cost, is that a pipeline and a facility that you estimated the cost of that might be that long?
Might be that long, that's right. Yeah. That's the water. That would be the water treatment plant. Where the water treatment plant is, when it'd be expanded, and then pipes to get it to there. There'd be also be, and we'll talk about that here. So the next thing. So the facilities will be used to develop this project. Would be wells with an average flow of about 17 to 28 gallons per minute. In fact, I mentioned Sols has some comments on this already. Based on their current production with their Carrizo project in Bear County, that number might be optimistic. So we're going to look at maybe reducing that 1728 gallons per minute down to see something more realistic. So the number of wells may stay the same and may increase a little bit. But so phase 1 right now would be 4 wells, phase 2 would be 3, and phase 3 would be 3 more, for a total of 10 wells. Well field is on Saul's property in southern Bear County. There'd be collection pipelines and pumps necessary to get the water from that well field to the water treatment plant. Uniform delivery and a peaking factor of 1.0. I'll talk about that really briefly just because I'll say that several times today. What that means is that the facilities, in terms of costing, the facilities are sized to just deliver that water uniformly throughout the year. There's no peaking month, it's not upsized to meet like summer peak demand or anything. It's just a uniform delivery. You'll see in a later strategy, we actually do have a peaking factor larger than 1.0, where we did size something for larger than that. There is iron manganese treatment for the 21,000 acre feet of water, and there, with our analysis thus far, there's minimal environmental impacts of this project. Again, we're talking about wells and a relatively small pipeline in southern Bear County. So because of that, because of the average flow of the wells probably not being as high as 1,700 gallons per minute, and again, we need to look at that again. I got comments last night, so I haven't had a chance to do that. This cost is likely to change, but right now, here's the cost presented for this. I want to talk real quick about what each one of these means, because again, you'll see this kind of information presented along in every strategy here. So cost of facilities is really the cost of construction. That's how you're going to construct this, cost of those facilities. When you have project cost, that's that cost of facilities, but then it's also the other things like surveying, environmental studies, mitigation, the engineering involved, the legal side of things. All those other kind of project costs plus the construction costs get added together to give us a total project cost. And that total project cost is typically what you might amortize. And then we take that number, we amortize it for non-reservoir projects. That's amortized at 3.5% for 20 years. And then also that annual cost also includes any O&M, which is an annual expense regardless of how long it goes on, and any power costs associated with the project. Project yield, simply, we've stated that earlier, 21,000 acre feet per year. You take those annual costs, you divide by 21,000 acre feet of yield, you get a unit cost, in this case 208, which is probably unrealistic. That number's going to be off on that table. So, anyway, so my plan with this one, since I do have some comments from Saul's, is we're probably going to revisit this. It'll be a quick revisit of the cost. I don't think a lot of things are going to change. I'll probably bring that back to you in August. I may even just reference that it's in the packet next time. I'm not sure how much. We'll have a lot to talk about next meeting. So, but just realize this one's going to change some based on some comments and yeah. So, any questions on the expanded local Carrizo for Salt? Yes, sir.
Are you saying that you expect the Carrizo to recharge that amount of water each year?
No. This is what this project would produce every year. That's all that is. Independent of recharge. And so this project is within the model available groundwater volume for southern Bear County, and the Carrizo will which was set by the DFC, the desired future condition, as part of the GMA process. And how that relates to recharge, you'd have to talk to the GMA.
So the level will fall?
I think that with the desired future condition in this part, I think that yes, the level would fall. That's part of the that's part of the desired future condition would be that water levels would tail off over time, yes. It's a 50-year period they look at. Yeah. Fair. Questions? Any other questions? All right. Next one is the expanded brackish Wilcox groundwater project for Saws. So, similar fashion, 4 slides. We'll talk through this a little quicker this time. So it was a recommended water management strategy in the 2016 plan. Actually, this project was, I think, 2 different strategies. We kind of combined it together and made just multiple phases. Source of supply is brackish Wilcox groundwater in Wilson County. It is regulated by the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District. Groundwater, it is indicated that groundwater is available within the MAG. I wanted to say, I should mention this earlier. So, with all groundwater strategies, Daniel and Associates, or our sub-consultant, has been assisting with all of this and is helping them out. I want to thank them for their support. And regarding the environmental analysis, I want to thank SWCA for all their help on that. There was a work group formed, and I think some guiding principles about how we were going to go about doing environmental analysis this time. I want to thank the work group that helped with all that information. It's helped guide us on how to do our environmental analysis a little better this cycle. So I wanted to state that before we get too far into the weeds here, but and this is a groundwater strategy, so it worked out. So total project yield across all the phases is 70,000 acre feet per year. And this one, phase 1, is already online. They already have a brackish groundwater project, and so we're looking at how we can go about doing phase 2 and 3, which would happen in the decade of 2040, and then phase 4 and phase 5 probably in the 2060 decade for those various volumes. It's important to note that because this is a brackish project, that if you want a finished water volume of, in the case of phase 2, of 13,040, there is the process of desalination in which you have brine rejects. You end up actually pumping more water out of the aquifer to produce that 13,400. In this case, about 1,000 acre feet in addition. And that brine reject is a highly concentrated brine that gets disposed of through deep well injection. Again, the delivery point is the H2O Oak Center. Again, we have a conceptual level map to show you just in terms of how we went about costing this, where phase 2, phase 3, 4, and 5 may be located in general. And those blobs are just blobs. They're not specific outlines of well fields or anything. It's just those general areas. Facilities associated with this, each of the phases. So average flow of these wells would be around 800 gallons per minute. Looking at about 14 wells for phase 2, 7 for phase 3, 32 wells for phase 4, and 19 for phase 5. Again, collection of pipelines and pump stations. Again, a uniform delivery. So if all the facilities are sized, it's just uniform delivery. The TDS here is about 1,500 milligrams per liter, so we do require brackish groundwater desalination. We have injection wells somewhere around the depths of 5,000 feet at around 450 gallons per minute. Again, minimal environmental impacts. And cost of facilities here for all 4 of these additional phases, about $540 million. Total project cost when you add in the engineering and the contingencies and the legal and the mitigations and land acquisition, around $782 million. You amortize that, add in O&M and power costs, you get about $97 million per year. Total unit cost here for around $1,400 an acre foot per year. Now, some of this will be spread out over, as you saw, the 2040 decade. Some will be spread out over the 2060 decade. So something to consider there as well. Any questions on this?
Yes. So, Water Development Board put out a draft report. They drew a circle around Wilson County, Gonzales, and Guadalupe County. And in that report, it said 30,000 acre feet is what they recommended for the Wilcox, brackish Wilcox. And so I look at these projects that's over 30,000. It was a draft and it went away. I don't know where it is now. wondering how that would jive with this. Right now, the MAG includes that much, but if we get that report and the report says, well, really, 30,000 is what should be permitted in there, and then we're supposed to come up with some rules to allow that full 30,000 to be permitted. And so if that passes, I'm not sure how that's going to affect this project.
I think my best answer is that would be something to consider maybe the next cycle. And during the cycle, we're tied to what the MAG can produce, regardless if it's fresh or brackish. And so at this point, we're within that MAG, and we're adequate, I guess. But yeah, if that information became, final, and it became part of the water and board rules, then we'd have to probably consider it. I just don't know if that's going to happen within the cycle. I can't imagine it happening. Yeah.
Is there any time or date tied to these phases?
Back in the first slide, there's the 2040 decade for the first two and 2060 decade for the next two.
Oh, I see it. Thank you.
Any other questions? So the next one, SS Water Supply Corporation. That's going to be our next one. I think that's the next one in your packet as well. So similar to Saul's developing the project, although on a much different scale, SS Water Supply Corporation is looking at Brackish Wilcox project, also in Wilson County. This was a recommended strategy in the 2016 plan. The source, again, Brackish Wilcox from Wilson County. It's regulated by the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District. It is available within the MAG. They are looking at a 1 MGD project, so that's about 1,120 acre-feet per year, probably implemented in the 2060 decade. So it's quite a ways out there. Again, you have the process of desalination, so there is some reject water. You end up pumping around 1,200 acre-feet of water to do that. The delivery point would be their Southern Springs Road plant, a facility adjacent to that, and I'll show you that in the map. So, again, my map note here. This project is looking at essentially 3 wells, 2 production, 1 in backup, to produce the groundwater necessary. They would build a desalination facility adjacent to their existing Southern Springs plant. It's all relatively compact. This is all land that they already own and control, and then they would just distribute it in their existing distribution system. So 3 wells with an average flow of 800 gallons a minute again. I mentioned this, one of those would be for contingency purposes. The well field's on their property. The collection pipelines. The TDS here is about 1250 milligrams per liter. It's just in context, I don't know if everyone knows this, but drinking water stands 500 milligrams per liter. So the TDS of 1250, desalination process brings that down to roughly about 500 milligrams per liter. And with that, you can do some blending. So the desalination process will actually get that TDS down below that when you use RO technology. And so what happens is you end up blending some of that water back to get close to that, between usually about 450 and 500 milligrams per liter. That's typically how that works. And so we've accounted for that blending. Again, new water treatment plant for pre-treatment and desalination, again, adjacent to their existing plants. 400 gallons per minute injection well, depth of around 4,500 feet deep. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the one where we actually have a peak day factor in here. So we're doing peak day delivery 2.0. The main reason for doing so is their current source of water is Carrizo in the same area. These wells will be co-located with that. And it's kind of envisioned that they're by the time they need this water, they're going to be operating those Carrizo wells to meet peak day demands. They can't really base load this and then peak off those existing Carrizo wells, so we'll have to probably peak off both. The pipeline is tied to the existing delivery system. Again, minimal environmental impacts is relatively compact. Cost of facilities around $14.5 million. Take that number and add in the mitigation, engineering, contingency, all that stuff. You get around $20.4 million. amortize that and add an O&M, and power costs about $3.2 million per year for a unit cost of around $2,900 an acre foot. It's not cheap, but yes, sir.
Brian, are today dollar figures or are these projected?
So everything presented in today and everything presented in the regional plan will be based on September 2018 dollars.
Thank you.
That's by rule of the Water Island Board.
Building on that question, so the costing tool or costing formula, are you utilizing as kind of timestamp at that 2018 level?
Yep.
We've just seen a lot of projects here within the past month citing crazy costs for steel and concrete that are driving these projects astronomically higher. So I feel like all of these are already outdated. So kind of on that question as well, and I'm not asking to do this, but have you seen a comparison of what these dollars look like for these projects in the last plan versus these increases, I guess, between the...
So a couple things there. So from the previous cycle to this cycle, the Water Island Board went through a process to update costs. They took their costing tool that was developed, and they updated, one of the big components was updating its cost curves to get more recent information. The last cycle, we based everything on September 2013 dollars, this time September 2018 dollars. I have not done personally a comparison. I look back at the old plan sometimes and just see what the numbers were, and there are changes. But there's also changes in assumptions. So the last planning cycle, for example, the amortization was 5.5% over 20 years. Now it's 3.5% over 20 years.
So it's hard to do an apples.
It's hard to do an apples to apples. Power cost has changed as well. I think it was 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's 8 or 7. I don't know. Can't remember. All these little details make differences. In terms of like real dollar cost, I think remember this is a planning document. It's not intended to be necessarily real dollars. The idea here is that we are costing everything on the same basis, so that you can compare one project to another, and realize that while this project on unit cost is roughly over double what the previous one we just saw was. We can't say it's going to definitely cost double that, but it's going to cost more on a unit basis than the previous one. And part of that's because of economies of scale. We're talking relatively small. Our RO is not cheap. Deep well injection is not cheap. You take a lot of energy to do RO is expensive as well. You take a lot of cost there and divide it by a small number, you're going to have a high unit cost, as opposed to a larger project, economy of scale, bigger pipelines too. You're going to have a little more savings there. So, yeah. So just remember that intent is not to project real dollars. I don't anticipate any entity is going to go out and say, well, the regional plan says it's going to cost this. Contractor build it for this. So I hope not. Good questions, though. Thank you. That's a good reminder for folks in the group and education for those new to the group. So, any questions on the Brackish Wilcox for SS Water Supply Corporation? Yes, sir.
Regarding the peaking factor, how is that? It's not simply a multiplier. You don't double the unit cost because it's a peaking factor. It's more complicated.
We're looking at double. We're essentially looking at double the size of the facilities. So the cost then comes out of that. So, for example, if this was costed at 1.0, we'd probably do 2 wells instead of 3 wells. The pipeline to get the water from the well field to the treatment plant would be a smaller diameter. The water treatment plant itself would be smaller, right? Because it's not having to produce that peak day demand and operating at 50% other days of the year, kind of thing. So that's really, we're looking at each component individually and saying, okay, if we have to meet a peak day demand of 2.0 with this number, what size facility do we need? So, okay. I should mention that I did send this to Herb Williams at SS Water Supply Corporation. He has already reviewed it and got back to me, and this looked great, actually. So, and like I said, the previous 2 Saul's is reviewing, and it's already sent me some comments on both. So, all right, we're getting there. I think I have 2 more. Kane Regional is next. All right. Canyon Regional Water Authority's Wells Ranch Phase 3. This was a recommended water management strategy in the 2016 plan. The source is Carrizo Wilcox Aquifer in Guadalupe County, which is regulated by the Guadalupe County Groundwater Conservation District. The groundwater is available within the MAG. Total project firm yield is 7,000 acre-feet per year, looking at 2 phases, 3,500 acre-feet in each, one in the 2020 decade and one in the 2030 decade. And Mr. Ramos is here too, so if you have any questions that I can't answer, hopefully he can. Delivery point is their current Canyon Regional Wells Water Authority's Wells Ranch Water Treatment Plant. So, well field, collecting water, moving water to their existing water treatment plant. Facilities included nine new wells with an average flow of about 650 gallons per minute. The information they presented us is that they would have a combination of Wilcox wells and Carrizo wells, and it would range from 290 to 910. So we ended up somewhere in the middle, about 650 and 9 wells, kind of splitting those 9 evenly between the Carrizo and the Wilcox. There's different flow rates for each and different depths for each, but that's where we ended up. Well fields adjacent to their existing Wells Ranch facilities in Guadalupe County. Again, collection pipelines and pump stations. Uniform delivery 1.0. It doesn't have to be just 1 or 2. It can be 1.5 someday or 1.3. So just keeping that up there. It would expand their Wells Ranch water treatment plant, and there would be minimal environmental impacts. Cost of facility is around $17 million. Take that number and add in engineering contingencies, environmental studies and mitigation, land acquisition if necessary, $24 million. Amortize that number, add in O&M power costs, around $7 million a year. You end up with a unit cost of around $1,000 an acre-foot. Just like the others I mentioned already, we sent the written documents to Canyon Regional. They're still in review. I anticipate getting comments back to them relatively soon. So, any questions, comments? Yes, Ms. Wilson.
I just have a comment. It may be good for people that haven't been with the Regional Board during the guiding principle discussion to understand that when you say to us minimal environmental impacts, you're talking about where pipelines and facilities are located and that there's not a known problem, but the engineering and drawings and map locating of those facilities and pipelines has not yet been done. And so I'm not objecting to your wording here. I know we're just trying to get through these lists, but if I were wording it, I would say minimal environmental impacts known at this point or something like that, because I think we don't know yet.
Right. So just to back up a little bit, back up what Bosnick was saying, this is all, again, planning level, looking at typically looking at habitat that may or may not be encountered as part of the project, both aquatic and terrestrial. And then realizing, too, that when an engineering study is done and pipeline routes are studying is being done, if habitat is encountered, there are ways to adjust pipeline routes to maybe either go around those or to mitigate for any potential habitat problems. If there's an aquatic one, you could simply maybe burrow underneath a river like San Marcos River or something, or such. So that this is all planning level information. We're looking at the habitat. We're looking for critical flaws essentially in that analysis, and realize there is a good chance that there's 1 or 2 species that will be found along the proposed what we throw here, and that further engineering studies and environmental studies will be done as part of that process, the design and implementation of that process and permitting part of the process. So just keep that in mind.
But for members that are, for the new members, Regional does not get involved with the route of pipelines. So we're just in the planning of the future water management strategies, and it's up to I call it developers, whoever wants to come up with the money to come up to drill the wells, to do all the transport the water. It's entirely up to that company to battle those fights, not Regional.
Right, but what I'm trying to avoid is having people look at a PowerPoint or something that's written in our documents and use that as the approval or okay of a project that hasn't yet been looked at.
You might mention that at the end of each of there's a subsection in each of these water management strategies that includes further considerations, and a lot of those items are mentioned, like effects to stream flow, effects to other groundwater users, and that sort of thing. So that would help address some of those.
The implementation section in here, we'll talk about, necessary permits necessary to do the project, talk about studies that need to be done, considerations of the environment, aquatic, all that stuff. So there's a listing there, kind of a bullet. So, all right. My last water management strategy, and I think my last item on this agenda, is the facilities expansion. So this one's different than the last four we've seen. It's more akin to advanced water conservation. It's kind of a catch-all. And the idea here is that this is where we gather information for various water user groups for infrastructure that they feel is necessary to better utilize existing sources or to fully implement multiple sources of water at once. And so some of this can be simple as like interconnects with nearby utilities. It could be large transmission facilities that may carry water from multiple sources of water, whether that's existing sources or new sources or a combination of both. It could be expansion of a water treatment plant or pump station to fully utilize a source that they already have the rights to. So, with that in mind, I will also say that this is not a comprehensive list. This is the list that we know as of now. This is the list that I talked to San Antonio Water Systems and Bronco Utilities and San Marcos and GVRA and those entities, Canyon Regional as well, and the ones listed here. If you or your utility or you know of a utility that has something that might be in this category, please get in touch with me. Have them get in touch with me. We can add to this list of projects. This is one that will be evolving, and we won't finalize this document towards the end because we do want to have the most comprehensive information. So, just a quick listing here of the water user groups. Again, what those we've reached out to and talked to. Some of this is carryover from the previous plan. Some of it's new since the old plan. But as goes to roll with one, they're looking at interconnects with 2 different utilities nearby. I should say at Medina side. I don't know why the side got dropped. Hayes County looking at transmission facilities to integrate supplies from a couple different sources, from southern Hayes County up to the Wimberley Wood Creek area. GVRA is looking at expanding their their water treatment plant for the Western Canyon project and other associated expansions as well. Spring-Scale Water Supply Corporation is looking at expanding their Lake Placid water treatment plant. San Antonio Water System has their water resource integration pipeline completion. I think that's a 2-phase project, and phase 1 is done and online, but phase 2 is still yet to come. And they're also looking at ASR water treatment plant expansion. CPS Energy is looking at a direct reuse pipeline to move water from Dos Rios wastewater treatment plant or water recycling center to their Calaveras and Frontenac Lakes. New Braunfels Utility has a couple. They're looking at an interconnect with the city of Seguin to exchange water, and then they're also looking at expanding their South water treatment plant. And Canyon Regional Water Authority is looking at expanding 2 other water treatment plants, the Lake Dunlop water treatment plant and the Hayes Caldwell water treatment plant. And so what we've done for each of these expansions, interconnects, etc., transmissions, we've gone through and kind of given a description of each of those. Listed the decade of need, the capacity of that expansion, and then we've listed here the project costs and then that annual cost associated with that. So I'm not going to go through all these, but I just want you to see it, know that it's there. If there's any questions on specific line items here, we can talk about it. Yes?
Hayes County is listed, but they're not a water user group, so I wondered who it was.
So in the last cycle, we called that Hayes County Other, and the representative was
He's on your name.
Commissioner
Will Conley.
Mr. Conley, yes, thank you. Technical name was, Will Conley was the one who was kind of sponsoring that, yes. So, but Hayes County out there would be the, it could also end up being Wonderly Wood Creek as the sponsor as well. Any other questions, comments on facilities expansion? Again, if your project's not listed here and you think it should be, let me know. If you know a project out there, one of your neighbors has a project that should be listed here, let's get it on the list.
I got a question based on, I guess, when you talked about new planning members. Would it be beneficial for this group, like, there were some good questions asked in regards to DFCs and MAGs. To review that, what is a DFC, what is a MAG, what's GMA 13, what are we underwriting, what plan are we using now, when is the next one going to be in place? And just that way everybody understands what documents we're following up. So that may be beneficial for the next planning group meeting, which this is item number 17, what can we come up against?
Okay.
So I'm getting just an overview, this is what we're under, maybe we can put the bracket. And this is the bracket statement, what we're doing right now. So everybody understands, what the DFC is, what that is, and what we're doing.
I can facilitate such a discussion. I would also ask that Water Elm Board maybe chip in, and then and a representative from GMA 13 or GMA 15 speak as well, just to kind of give
We can
background.
cover some of that information here.
That's all I have on this agenda.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Regarding the discussion of DSCs, MAGs, and that sort of thing, I think that's a great idea. Perhaps we could consider that at the next work group meeting, maybe an agenda item presentation. Those individuals that work in that area, if you'd like to be involved in that, perhaps contact Steve and his team and let them know you have an interest if you want to speak to what be part of the presentation.
Quick question, related to what Diane mentioned earlier, in regards to the note of the minimal environmental impact. Do we ever, what would constitute environmental impact for you to list it in your PowerPoint?
If there was a on-channel or off-channel reservoir that was sited, over a habitat, that would certainly be something we would list, moderate or severe, environmental impact.
Does that happen at this stage?
If we had, sometimes, but not often. A lot of times, because a lot of these are ideas of things, conceptualizations of things that might happen in 2040, 2060, 2070, whatever the case may be. We're working with very little information, and we're, maybe minimal environmental impact isn't the right word. It's kind of like at the planning level, noting that environmental impact could be mitigated or could be addressed during the design and engineering phases of that. So
Yeah, because I just wondered the value for using it in the PowerPoint, as you said, because I think to the point that you made, the fact that it's there, and if someone is just looking at one project and not the scope of things, it makes a point. But if it's there and it really isn't making. It doesn't make much sense to have it there. I wonder if we should just remove them.
So, I don't know. I don't think in any of the write-ups we've done so far, we just say that. There's a lot more written. I don't know. I can't remember how we boil it down. I want to say there's a better description of how that is all analyzed. So, I'll make sure. Let me work with the SCTWP. We'll get some good language both for future PowerPoints and for the write-ups to make sure we're kind of catching that information of this is a very high level planning. There may be issues, but those can be addressed during actual design studies, engineering design, or something like that. And I think at this level, again, if we found something pretty critical, would be a major issue. Yeah, we'd note it. Great ideas. If somebody wanted to put a pump station in the middle of the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge or reservoir there, we'd probably note that here.
So maybe it's worth noting it for those that you see a problem, but those that it is,
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Move to agenda item 14, discussion and appropriate action to identify potential water management strategies for evaluations. Aaron, do you have some recommendations?
I do. I have, and I think this is in your handout as well. This is just a listing of the water management strategies that we would bring forward. We talked about last cycle having a block 3 and what those might be. I've shown you this list already, but I want to point out at the bottom of page 2 and running on to page 3 is a list of all the ones that this group has already approved in blocks 1 and 2 and what the cost of each one of those were. And in total, about $306,000. And at the bottom line here, we have a total budget for 5A, which is where we evaluate water management strategies of $373,405. So you can see where that is. My plan here, and you'll see why, we've used up the entire $67,405 that's left for block 3 here. So let's talk about these real quick back at the top. So there was some confusion on my part. We're involving Canyon Regional Water Authority. We just showed you Wells Ranch Phase 3, which is a freshwater project. They do have a Brackish Wilcox project that we haven't scoped, and I want to make sure we got that in there. So this one would be, this is one that was in the 2016 plan as well. Brackish Wilcox aquifer is the source, looking at about 14,700 acre feet a year of treated brackish groundwater in the 2020 decade.
Right, that's one of it.
It's a decade? What decade is it?
I believe it's 2040.
Okay, 2040. We'll make that change before we submit to the water on board. 2040 decade. I'll say this once because it says I do it. Every one of these kind of does this, but when we do a strategy evaluation, we're going to be documenting whatever entity, in this case, Canyon Regional's latest plans are, including the decade of need. We'll evaluate that. If it's a groundwater project, we'll evaluate it against the model available groundwater. If it's a surface water project, we'll be looking at the TCQ WAM. We'll evaluate the environmental impacts, potential environmental impacts of the project. We'll look at the costs, and we'll look at the document the implementation issues. And so we'll summarize all that in the water management strategy. So I said that once. I'm not going to say it for the next ones, but realize when we talk about we're going to develop water management strategy, that's the process we're going to go through. So my asterisk here is just to make sure that there was no confusion between Wells Ranch Phase 3 and this Wilcox project, as I think there was earlier. So about $10,000 to accomplish that. Again, that's all the analysis, that's the database work, that's the costing, that's the SWCA doing the environmental, that's Dana B. Stevens doing the groundwater work, that's doing the write-up and working with the entity to make sure we're training the project correctly. So the next one's Martindale Water Supply Corporation. They're looking at a new water supply well. They're seeking a new shallow well in Willoughby County that would deliver raw water to their water treatment plant. I don't have enough information right now to fully understand this, but it may be an alluvial well which draws groundwater under the influence of surface water. I need to get better information on that because it is a shallow well. Or it could be just a local groundwater source there as well. We'll look at that, and again, we'll develop a water management strategy, and all of that contains that. We're looking at $6,000 for that one. And as I throw out these 10,000, 6,000, I'll just kind of reiterate the discussion we had last time. These numbers, these are estimates at this point. At the end of the day, we're held to that 373,000. We're going to develop somewhere between 30 and 36 water management strategies for that, and we're going to keep it within that 373,000, or the best of our ability of that. So at the end of the day, the bottom line, the entire regional plan, we can't violate that. So Maxwell Water Supply Corporation. Trinity, looking at doing a Trinity well in Hayes County, and they want to deliver that into their system. Again, we're going to develop a water management strategy and look at all those various pieces that go into it. About $6,000 is what we estimate for that one. County Line has two. County Line Water Supply Corporation. They're looking at a Trinity supply, Trinity aquifer, develop about 1,000 acre feet of water, and bring that into their system through a phased approach. I don't have information on those phasings right now or when that might occur, but I should be scoped and under contract to do that. We'll take a look at that. We'll do a water management strategy evaluation, as we've discussed already. About $6,000 for that one as well. County Line Water Supply Corporation also has the Brackish Edwards supply they're looking at. They're looking at new Brackish Edwards groundwater for about 1,500 acre feet, so several wells probably for a phased approach. Again, we'll work with them, get the information, and develop a water management strategy and present that to you as well. And then, there's about $33,405 left over if you count block 1, 2, and these 5 I've mentioned already. The Water Development Board allows us to take that Task 5A budget and set aside up to 10% for kind of the unknown, what we don't know might be out there. But get us, go ahead and get us under scope so we don't have to go through this process again. So what I propose is that we set aside that this $33,400 for evaluation up to 4 kind of undefined water management strategies at this point. I say undefined, but at the same time I'm still kind of trying to figure out what's going on with Uvalde ASR. There's Kennedy in Karnes County. City of Kennedy is looking at some new well fields, so there's one that's lingering out there as well, and then the City of Goliad as well. I was looking at a well replacement, but it also might be larger capacity, so that may be a water management strategy. It might be a facilities expansion, I'm not sure. So we're still trying to get our hands around those 3 out there. Some of those might just go away. Some of them might develop into full strategies. We don't know, but I want to have some money there. You know, and like I said, the Water Development Board rules allows us to kind of set money aside for this unknown as things come up, so we can kind of just get them done and into the plan without a huge delay. It's not a lot of money, obviously. 4 strategies, $30,000, maybe $7,500, $8,000 each. The intent with that is we would not start on any of those without at least informing the chair or the worker, or the planning group to get in whole first. So we wouldn't just go run about and start doing the water management strategy. But we would inform the work planning group and get started on that. But we wouldn't have to go through that process of getting approved by the Water Development Board and any subsequent delays because of that. And there would be we wouldn't necessarily have to get any action on that. So we just kind of give that thumbs up. Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. So does that make sense where that set aside comes from and what I propose to do with that? We did this in the previous cycle. I can't remember the amount or how many. I think it was up to 5 last time or whatever. But I think we only did like 3 or 4. But that money, is nice to have, just like I said, as things come up. And again, we may get approached in August by somebody that says, "Hey, I need this in the plan." We're like, "Okay, let's see what we can do." So, with that, if you include the set aside, that allocates our entitled amount. So this block 3 would be $67,405. We've now fully allocated all of Task 5A budget. With your approvals today, we can get started on the first 5 there, and have, like I said, have that set aside for the other ones. And we can start the process with our water board to get that notice of proceed from them as well. So, any questions, comments on any of these or the process?
Brian, you skipped over a slide.
I did.
I think you might have. Is that facilities expansion that identified at 8, and there's $10,000, and if you look at the facilities expansion slide where you listed all the projects, is that enough to accomplish the evaluation on all those projects, or how does that work?
Well, we've already been working on it. Yeah, it's not a lot of money, but we're not doing a ton of work in that right now. But those costs, if you're looking at the water treatment expansion, it's really just going to the cost model in like a one line item type of thing and doing a quick calculation of cost. It's not a full-blown cost estimate of how they're going to go from 2 MGD to 4 MGD. It's just looking at the cost and say, well, it's a surface water treatment plant, and going from 2 MG to 4 MG should cost about this much, pulling that cost out. And then we'll, and in the write-up itself, we'll have about a paragraph on each one of those. So yeah, 10 we'll be fine with 10,000. We'll make it work. And again, the 10,000 is an estimate. We may actually spend 12,000 on that one and spend $2,000 less on another one. I don't know. Yeah, it's an estimate at this point in time. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, with that, I ask that we take some
You need a
action.
motion approving that schedule, cost schedule, and authorization to submit to PWD.
We would love that.
And is this where we need to address the possible combination of certain groups, or is this that something we need to take?
No, that's just that's an administrative thing that Sarah's doing with the water on board. That's,
Okay.
yeah.
So is there a motion to approve the schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, any discussion?
I have a question with regards to Canyon Lake's water supply. They came to us and asked us to make amendments to the population map that I don't see any projects that they have on this list. Is there something that we don't know about, or is there something we can forward?
It's a great question.
I'd be curious to see, we set aside $33,000 for those who know it. And they did come to us, asked us to amend, but we not see the numbers. So is there some type of courtesy contact you can make?
I'll reach out to them. Yeah, then they may be at one of those that blocks. There you go. Question.
And Tim, just a point of clarification, we've actually set two agenda items for this action. The one here is just to approve the scopes and budgets, and then the next agenda item would then be granting the San Antonio River Authority the ability to submit that and negotiate with the Water Development Board. So I just want to make that clarification before a vote was taken.
And execute contract amendment.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you for the clarification. Sir, that impacts the motion. I don't know that it needs to. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. It's passed. Move to agenda item 15. Discussion and appropriate action authorizing the San Antonio River Authority to request a notice to proceed from TWDB. Authorization for consultant and/or Sarah to work with TWDB on follow-up information that might be required. And finally, authorization for Sarah to negotiate and execute the subsequent TWDB contract amendments that will be issued following the notice to proceed.
So
And-
moved.
Second.
And
Okay,
I
motion second, discussion.
just wanted to make sure the motion included all that specific language that we have in the caption, because that is important for the Water Development Board.
I move that we adopt it with the existing language in the written form.
Thank you for clarification. Second stand. All those in any discussion? Additional? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Do we need Jeff and Director Jackson to nod to say we got
There you go.
We got thumbs up, I saw it.
Item 16, discussion appropriate action to approve budget adjustment to TWDB and Sarah contract. Okay?
So I'll start and Steve can chime in as necessary, but so at the beginning of every planning cycle, the Water on Board sets aside a volume, an amount of money for regional planning for each of the 16 regions, and within that money set aside, they actually allocate it to various tasks, task 1, 2A, all the way through 12. That is their estimate of how much they think it will cost to do each task. Within our contractual agreement with Black and Beach with San Antonio River Authority and San Antonio River Authority and Water on Board, there's an understanding that these numbers might not be perfect, and there could be an allowance for over or under by 35% of each of these tasks. However, on some occasions, we go over by more than 35% in certain areas, and it's something that has happened in this planning group, I think, at least the last 2 cycles, and we've had to do this. In order to stay in compliance, we typically will look at where we stand with each of these tasks and try to reallocate those funds so that we can be within that 35% allowance. And that does take a contract amendment between San Antonio River Authority and Water on Board and Black and Beach and San Antonio River Authority to move that money around. Essentially what we're asking here, we're not changing the bottom line, we're not asking for any additional money from the Water on Board or any sponsor or entity related to regional planning, and certainly not the planning group itself. We're looking at tasks that we've already completed and that we were underspent money on, essentially, and moving that to a task which we project we might go over on. At this point, we have not gone over on it. That task is task 10, which is public participation and plan adoption, and that's where we kind of pull the plan together. It's where we have our meetings, it's where we have our public hearings, It's where we have our work group meetings, and it's all that kind of stuff. So that, right now, if you look at money spent to date, plus where our projection will be at the end of the planning cycle, we will likely go over by more than 35%. At the same time, we're essentially done with water demand projections, the identification of needs, and we're almost completely done with existing supply analysis. There's one thing I sought to change in the database, so that we're done by May 31st for the socioeconomic impacts. So with that, we can take money out of those 4 tasks and move it into task 10. And so what I'm here today to ask you for is to authorize San Antonio River Authority to negotiate that and make that change with the Winter Elk Board, so that we can also do that with San Antonio River Authority and just kind of move that money around. Again, as you can see here, there's a $0 change to the bottom line. So.
I move the authorized adjustment as proposed. Second.
And I'll just clarify really quickly, this process doesn't result in a contract amendment. Sarah will just submit a budget memorandum documenting your adjustments that you've approved, and then we'll process that, but it doesn't require.
Oh, really? All right. That's what last time we did. Okay. I'll take your word for it.
In any case, we have a motion and second to approve that schedule and authorize the request. Described. Any additional discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Being no opposition, motion passed.
Mr. Chairman, while we were discussing, we missed who was the maker and who was the second. So
I made it, sir.
I second Ian Taylor and Jonathan Stevens.
Jonathan, please.
Thank you.
Agenda item 17, possible agenda items for the next regional meeting.
America's suggestion is a good one to put in.
GMA discussion.
Oh, the GMA EFC discussion? Yes, we supported that.
And are we gonna have, did I understand we're gonna have 15 water management strategies?
Or more?
Yes.
No, I mean at the next meeting, 15, is that right?
Or more.
We did 6 today. At this point, we have 34 plus these 4 kind of lingering ones that may or may not come about. So if you do the math, we've got 28 at least to do. I would like to knock out half of this the next meeting. And again, it won't be me talking the whole time. I'll bring back up.
Bring it in.
But somebody will be talking all the time.
I don't want to be a stick in the mud on a suggestion for a 101 over groundwater, but in the light of what we just heard, if we can do more of the 101, maybe at a different time, like the chair.
In the past, I think it's a good idea. In the past, haven't we had sort of a pre-meeting or a pre-event?
Start like at 8:30.
Those that want to attend.
I'll offer up to be here half hour early and just kind of talk through DFCs, MAGs, GMAs, and if someone from one of the GMAs could be here to help, because I'm not involved in GMA that much, so and maybe my groundwater consultant will be here too. So we'll get here half hour early. Anyone interested in that can show up, and we can draw on the board and talk. So. Okay.
Good deal.
To clarify, that won't be an agenda item, that will just be a pre-briefing?
I don't know how we started.
Yeah, we'll probably notice it so anybody can be aware of it and can attend. And when I say anybody, meaning the public also. But we've done it before, so we'll go back and see how we did that. But it won't be part of the normal meeting, but we will still notice it since there could be a quorum of the planning group that attends.
There may be quite a few who don't want to hear it.
Or have heard it before.
I didn't say it like that. I don't want to hear it again.
Well, Steve, you'll look into that, and but I like that idea of public notice on that.
Yes.
Okay, any additional items want to be discussed here? When it comes up in the interim? Next meeting. Future meeting dates at present, August 1, 2019, and November 7th. Please make arrangements as necessary. I'm sorry? Ms. Speaker?
November 7th, August 1st.
Yeah, that's right.
Move to agenda item 18. Is there any public comment? Anyone like to offer comment at this time? All right.
Move with adjourn.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Sorry. At 11:45. Like you're working on your second generation. All right, let's pack this shit.
John. Great. I don't know that we met. My name is Hillary Lilly. I work with the River Authority.
The problem is I spent the money before I could apply for low interest money. The problem is I spent the money before I could apply for low interest money.
In the bylaws.
Can you do it for this?
So I guess I should have waited.
For the stuff you're doing now?
You know, budget report, so, generation.
Maybe I can send it
We don't have our auto dialer set up to notify people if they have a
Here, let me
100
read your check mark so you know where to send it to.
That would be, you would enrage the public with that. I'm kind of curious what their approach would be.
Steve, take care.
Yeah, you don't want to call those customers.
I don't want to call.
Oh, here you go.
Say, Steve, I did not put my name on that work group, but I will be there. Okay, like always, Chapter 8.
Okay, you want me to put your name down?
Might as well, so I'm contacted with that, okay?
Okay, good deal.
Kevin,
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have a different email address? I've been trying to send something and it keeps bumping me back.
Right. Yes, you should have two of them.
Okay.
The good one is KI. VCTX.org. The other one, the power plant doesn't work anymore.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I just don't want you to miss out on anything I'm sending.
Yeah,
out,
no,
so.
please do. But send it to this one. I'm good with that one.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.